Okay, so let's look at some of these awesome projects. Let's start with Maria Sanchez Fernandez, who has once again done an amazing job here. Let's check out her project. Okay, so I think what I feel right away about this is that the design and the animation really nicely match the music. There's a lot of consideration that she gave to a lot of the details of this. For example, the color palette. It's kind of these pastel colors with baby blues and light pinks and yellows and white. And I think that really nicely matches the music in that it's got this kind of naive, playful tone about it. Now, the music has this kind of 8-bit video game quality, but I think Maria completely chose to ignore that and went her own way in terms of telling this story. And I think she did a really fantastic job. To me, this is all about like play and kind of like games that kids would play. I don't know, that's sort of what it reminds me of, like pinball and, you know, croquet and kind of marbles and things. And that's sort of what this reminds me of. And I think that works really nicely conceptually with the music. And I think the animation also really reflects that too, which is really great. She's done some really fun, subtle, kind of nice touches in here, like a stretch and a squash on some of these elements, which is pretty nice. And this kind of animation, I have to say, this sort of bouncing animation is very, very tough. Okay, so I think Maria did a great job with this. And it's got some really nice touches in here like this. Like the circle becomes this cube, or a square, like a rounded square, and she must have had to have used that null object trick that I showed you guys in order to roll this square. I think this looks really good, and the way that the sort of circle, the ball turns into the rolling square is really clever and nice as well. These little trailing lines are really fun, and we get down to this scene, which actually has a lot of complication in this, and is really nicely done. I just think this is really great animation. I mean, there's definitely a couple little things that I would probably change about this, like even just here, for example, as this moves over here, this ball is rotating a little bit too fast for the speed of the conveyor belt, for example. You can see it kind of right there. But again, really minor details. I think this is a really lovely piece. It works so well with the music, and it's just fantastic. So thank you once again, Maria, for doing a fantastic job. Okay? And let's move on to Erica Buchanan. All right? Erica has given us an amazing animation here, so let's check this out. Nice. I love this ending lockup. It's really cool, and I think Erica put a gradient on these strokes, which is not something you see a lot, and I think it's got a cool effect here. It sort of looks like they're made of gold or something, right? It's got this shiny, metal-y kind of quality, which I really like. Now, I will say that there's definitely some like gaps and stuff with this artwork, and I think it could kind of fit together better, especially for whatever reason in this stripe here and kind of down here. Some of the other pieces seem to lock together a little bit better, but it's one of those things that you do see this a couple places in this project where clearly I think Erica had to work really fast, and there's just some little like, symmetry issues where things should be lined up a little bit better, but whatever. Nonetheless, this is a really fun piece. I think it has a strong beginning, and it's just got a nice flow throughout, and I think one of the things that I really like about this piece, and I think in general about Erica's work from what I've been seeing, is that she really tries hard to put a lot in it and to give it a lot of value and to keep changing things up all the time. And I feel like there's a kind of like, there's a real honest understanding of how our eye works at play here, in that like Erica has a great sense of like when to move on to the next thing and when to move on to the next thing, and that's not always obvious. I will say that here I feel like this is an example where like Erica's moved on to something totally cool and awesome and new, and might have been better held for a little bit later on in the piece, because I feel like I'm still really appreciating like this animation that you're doing here at the beginning. And I love that transition, but almost feel like these stripes could have kept going on a little bit longer, or something a little bit more similar to that could have sort of taken us into that cool first transition. Even though I love all these elements and I think it's really nicely designed, I feel like it feels like a little bit of a departure from what was previously there. But nonetheless, good on you for just like keeping new things happening on screen all the time. So thank you so much, Erica. Amazing job. Let's move on to John Gahagan, okay? And after all these weeks, I'm sure I'm pronouncing that right. So let's check this out. Right on. So John also, I thought, did an amazing job. Same song as the last one, but also very different. And John went into this kind of minimal, kind of black and white way, design, which I think, obviously has lots of contrast, and I think works really well for this piece. And it just shows you sometimes that you don't often need a lot in terms of color or design or anything to make something that could be pretty riveting and fun to watch, like this piece, right? I mean, there's a couple little tweaks that I would probably give here. I think this rotation's too fast, but I love this whole transition. These kind of move out to the sides here and then become these sort of stripes that draw themselves on with this nice triangular kind of leading edge, right? And then this shrinks down and turns into from a rectangle into a circle. And I just think that this whole animation here is really fun. And also this, I think, is really clever. He's got these kind of like two counter-rotating sets of circles, but it feels like one move to me. So check this out again. It doesn't feel like a bunch of stuff happening at the same time. It feels like one thing to me, even though it's got this counter-rotation in it. And then I think this end here is really successful too. He kind of brings these like thin things in, and then this turn here is really unexpected, and it just gives us a nice little ending. So really cool job, John. Excellent. And finally, let's talk about Kent Albin, who's also done an amazing job as always. So let's check this out. Awesome. So that's really fun. And as with a lot of Ken's work, I think right away, I just think this looks really nicely designed. He's just put a lot of effort into this shading and into the colors. And also, he's given us a lesson here in contrast, right? So he's got this large object and a small object, which right away builds conflict. And additionally, he's got this other really nice choice to put these kind of like thin lines in here, which gives us a kind of a different contrast. Even though they're also circular shaped, the thinness of the lines contrasts really nicely with the kind of thicker heaviness of these kind of shaded, rounder circles, right? So right off the bat, I think that's tremendous. And I also want to say that what Kent is doing here is very hard. This kind of like liquidy, morphing, interactive kind of physics is a real challenge in After Effects. And I think he's done a really nice job with it. A couple of things that I feel like is that it gets a little bit too repetitive maybe here in the middle with the sort of back and forth, and that it could possibly move on. Like what we see here is very different from, like, for example, what Erica did, though I like them both. But Erica really takes us on more of a journey, and we keep coming to a new place and a new place and a new place, and there's something really nice about this. And here we have more of a classic story. So this has like more of a narrative, which helps take us through the length of it. But I wish the look would change a little bit more in a couple of places. It would be really easy, like when they collide, just to have the background changed colors and maybe the circles change, and I think we'd still understand that they were the same characters, but it would just add a little more dynamic feeling to the sense of this changing, right? So, this is super cool, and I love this part where the ball squeezes through here and goes on the inside. I think that's really nice, and the color change is really nice and really welcome. That it like moves around in here is really awesome. This kind of like super liquidy animation is really, really, really hard to do, and I definitely applaud Kent for giving it a shot. I think here you have to be really careful that like all the edge shapes are really clean and really organic, and you don't get into these kind of like these like little points and stuff. I think you'd want like really kind of simple curved areas. But again, this is the kind of thing that you'd probably have to animate like basically frame by frame, almost like a cell animation. So this is like hella tough here, okay? So I think Kent's done an amazing job. The only other crit I think that I have about this is that some of these bursts are maybe a little bit too quick. I really like them, but I feel like they kind of flash by faster than my eye can really appreciate what's happening there. So maybe slow those down a little bit. But other than that, I think Kent's done an amazing job, and everybody really did an amazing job on this. So thank you so much for your hard work on these Geometric Dance Party projects.